When picking the right productivity technique, there are two layers of consideration that many of us overlook. The first is knowing what problem you're trying to solve. Luckily, there are only four real problems productivity techniques are designed to fix, and every system you've heard of fits into one of them. The second layer is structural depth. How extensive you want your solution to be. Not every situation needs a full-blown system, just like how quick fixes sometimes aren't enough to address the real bottleneck. Let's map this out and we can see exactly where each technique fits. We'll start with one of the most common productivity traps, unclear goals. When we don't have a clear game plan, everything feels important and chaotic at the same time. The best solution for this is prioritization techniques. They provide a clear hierarchy for our attention and stop us from being reactive to whatever that's making the most noise. A quick fix sequence is to first start with a brain dump. The objective here is to offload, so don't overthink this. Get everything out of your head into a notebook or a document. Nothing is too trivial and there is no need for any polish or structure. After you've written down everything, look through the list and separate them into two buckets. Things that require your attention and things that do not. Depending on the complexity of your action list, you can then either pick up the three most important tasks to tackle or use Eisenhower matrix to further separate what's important from what's just urgent. But that's just a short-term fix. In the longer run, it is also useful to train our intuition to recognize what's truly impactful. Here's where the 80-20 rule comes in. The idea is that no matter what goal we are pursuing, there is a small portion of our effort, roughly around 20%, that drives the bulk of our results. The remaining 80% tends to be busy work, noise, or marginal gains that just don't really move the needle. It's a simple principle, but over time, it rewires how we see effort and payoff. With practice, it gets easier for us to spot the key levers that create real momentum, and in turn, we get better at prioritizing. And if you're really serious about this, you can also try out full frameworks. OKR gives structure to ambitious goals by breaking them into clear, measurable key results, making it ideal for long-term projects or even things like personal career development. It goes beyond the traditional KPI methodology, as instead of just tracking your outputs, for example, how many books you've read this month or how many things you've crossed off from your to-do list today, OKR focuses on aligning our effort so that every action is intentional and they actually build up to our desired outcome. So instead of reading random books just to hit our target, or padding our to-do list so we have more things to cross out, it keeps us honest and reduces performative distractions. But while it is a great tool for goal setting, OKR operates at a macro level and is not meant to be a task tracker. For that, you'll want something like getting things done. GTD is a detailed, hands-on system designed to capture, organize, and track every single task so nothing slips through the cracks. But because GTD is very thorough, it's also pretty high maintenance and it's not for everyone. If you're the type who likes to get into the nitty-gritties and really enjoy having tight control over the execution of things, then GTD is something that you might want to consider. Now, let's move on to the next problem. What if you know what you're supposed to do, but your main issue is finding the motivation to start? For that, we can try task initiation techniques. Most of the quick fixes revolve around introducing a limitation of some sort to break the task up into smaller, more manageable beats. This lowers perceived effort and makes it much easier to get over our inertia. You can try the 2-minute rule, where if something takes less than 2 minutes to do, just do it and get it out of the way. If it's a bigger task, Pomodoro works really well by breaking it into 25 to 30-minute chunks, followed by a 10 to 15-minute break. And you just repeat it to steadily chip away at your task. Alternatively, you can also try the rule of 3. For your brain dump list, pick up just 3 things that you want to focus on and work on them. They don't have to be the most important or the most urgent. The goal here is just to kickstart your momentum. If you want something that is longer term, time blocking is another popular technique. Every day, you draw out blocks of time for specific activities. Set up your calendar alerts and you're done. It gives your day structure, removes decision fatigue and guesswork, and all you have to do is to just follow your schedule. If you have ADHD, there is some research that shows time blocking is useful because it helps to externalize time and provides clear boundaries. Another technique that you can try is to eat the frog. Mark Twain supposedly said, "Eat a live frog first thing in the morning and nothing worse will happen to you the rest of the day." This frog in question is your hardest, most important task, and the one that you're most likely to procrastinate on. The idea is that you tackle this task at the start of the day while your energy and willpower are fresh. And not only does this stop the frog from looming over you, it also gives you a hit of accomplishment that can easily translate into momentum for the rest of the day. Now, if you want something that is truly long term, you have to get deep and address the root cause of your procrastination. The thing that we always forget is that procrastination is not a time management issue. It's a stress response and it requires building better resilience and coping mechanism. I started a procrastination journal to track all my triggers and behavior, and it has helped me immensely. If you're a chronic procrastinator like me, I strongly recommend trying it out. Now, maybe starting a task isn't your issue, but staying focused is. Your mind keeps drifting off and you keep getting distracted, but you wish that you could lock in for longer stretches. One of the biggest barriers to starting deep work is the open endedness of our work. When the task feels infinite, our brain anticipates fatigue before we even begin. Time boxing is similar to Pomodoro, but your session is much longer. Typically, people aim for 45 minutes to an hour, and you stop when the time is up, regardless of whether the task is completed. Its goal is to define a boundary around work so that it doesn't expand endlessly, also known as the Parkinson's Law. In doing so, you have a clear finish line in sight and a safe, high intensity window. This lowers cognitive resistance and makes it easier for us to stay focused. Alternatively, you can also try colored noise, white, pink, or brown noise. White noise sounds like static or fans. They are great for drowning out noisy backgrounds. Pink noise is much softer, like rain or rustling leaves. They are often used for a relaxed concentration session such as reading. Brown noise is deep and bassy, like thunder or a lower frequency static. Similar to white noise, they are great at masking noisy backgrounds. If you're looking for something that is more long-term, you can try Ultradian rhythm breaks or task batching. Both of these techniques require a little bit more planning. Circadian rhythm is something that we are familiar with. It's our 24-hour body clock that corresponds to the day-night cycle. When it's dark, we feel sleepy, and when it's bright, we feel more alert. Ultradian rhythms are like the mini cycles within that 24-hour day. Essentially, during our awake hours, we still go through fluctuations in energy and alertness, and this affects our ability to concentrate and focus throughout the day. By paying attention to these cycles, we can match the energy demand of our tasks by scheduling the more taxing work during our peak periods and taking a break when it naturally dips. This way, we are working with our body instead of against it. Task batching follows a similar idea. If you're able to assess how much focus each task requires, we can group them and work on each batch collectively to minimize the cognitive cost from context switching. If you're able to pair task batching with ultradian rhythm, then our energy will feel more sustainable throughout the day and we'll be able to get more done with less mental fatigue. If you really want to develop your attentional control and hit the flow state more often, then you can try the deep work framework. It requires a ritual of regular time blocking for focused work and training yourself to re-embrace boredom. You could also redesign your space to minimize distractions, and at its extreme, the framework recommends to reject or at least limit all shallow or low value work that fragments your attention. Cal Newport, creator of this deep work framework, believes that email is one of the biggest productivity killers. So he limits it by only checking his work email once a week, and he doesn't even have a personal email. Well, for most of us, it might be difficult to achieve this level of selectiveness. But it is still helpful to be mindful of how much value we are actually creating in our work. One of the perks of technology is that we no longer need to remember everything in our minds. And the second brain is excellent for this. It provides an on demand repository for our ideas, notes, and tasks, freeing up our cognitive capacity for more impactful work. Second brain is great, and I think everyone should have one, especially since our memory is not the most reliable source of truth. It is easy to set up and is only as high maintenance as you want it to be. Finally, what if you're cool with all these issues and instead your goal is simply to make sure that you can repeat what works? How do we keep ourselves accountable? Well, there are no quick fixes for this category because, it kind of goes against the whole idea. You can't shortcut consistency. But yes, there is a behavioral hack. It's called Don't Break the Chain. If you've ever used an app for any form of tracking, whether it's budget, habits, weight, no smoking, etc., or any app with a sign in bonus, you'll be familiar with the idea of streaks. It basically capitalizes on sunk cost fallacy and our thirst for perfectionism. The longer a chain is, the more painful it feels to break it because we are wired to avoid loss far more than to seek gain. It is also very powerful as a visual mnemonic because seeing the streak grow is a very tangible feedback. So, an easy way to start would be to start a streak. Of course, we can complement it with other full system solutions. Kanban, Scrum, and Agile are all great tools for tracking and visualizing progress. They're usually used in team based environments, but they can be adapted for individual use. Let's start with Kanban. It's the simplest and most visual of the three. There are basically 3 columns for each stage of your task: to do, doing, and done. You move your tasks across the columns as you work on them, and it's useful for those who hate the ambiguity of not knowing exactly how much you've done or how much more there is to do. Besides visualizing progress, Kanban is especially useful in helping you to gauge your capacity. One of Kanban's key rules is to limit how many tasks you are working on simultaneously. This constraint encourages focus, so you finish your tasks more consistently instead of dabbling in a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and never actually completing anything. However, some people may find Kanban a little too rigid or one dimensional, especially for complex or creative projects. For that, you can check out Scrum. Instead of dividing your tasks into work stages, Scrum uses sprints, a time bound limitation usually around 1 or 2 weeks. The key idea here is iteration. Instead of trying to deliver the project perfectly on your first try, you shrink it down into a smaller, functional version first, then improve it piece by piece with each sprint. It keeps progress tangible while preventing perfectionism from paralyzing you. Scrum is also great for consistency because you're not forcing yourself to strive for endless momentum. Each sprint you focus, you deliver, and then you reset so that you're always refreshed for the next sprint. Finally, we have Agile. Agile isn't really a system you follow, but rather it's a mindset that you adopt. It's about focusing on learning what works rather than doing things right. That means staying flexible, responding to change, and continuously iterate. If this sounds familiar as Scrum, you're right, because Scrum was developed from the philosophy of Agile. If we apply Agile to our personal productivity, it means that we stop obsessing over whether we are sticking to our plans so that we can continuously evolve them based on our current challenges, life stage, and working style. If something doesn't work, there is no need to feel upset or embarrassed because that's the whole point of an experiment. And I think this mentality is what consistency looks like. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope that you find it helpful. See you in the next one.